continue. There we go, we are now live.
Perfect.
Welcome, just waiting for a couple of more people to filter in. Just wait a couple of more minutes. We'll give it till 5 past at most, and then we'll get started. Just give it one more minute just for anyone else to join. Okay, I think that'll do. I better not leave them much longer, otherwise we won't get through everything. So, welcome to the Azure123 webinar series for education. Hopefully everyone can see my screen and hear me clearly. Thanks to everyone for taking some time out of your day to attend this morning. So on this webinar, you have myself, Ryan Williams. I'm an Azure consultant at Sol-Tec. And I also have my colleague here with me today, Barry. So Barry, introduce himself.
Hello everybody. Yeah, my name's Barry Sharpen. I'll be monitoring the Q&A section today. So we would really welcome questions because we want to make the content relevant to yourselves. So any questions as Ryan goes through, please post them in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Okay, so let's take a quick look at our agenda today. So we're going to complete the slides with some demos in there in about 45 minutes or so. This will leave about 15 minutes towards the end where myself and Barry can read through your questions and answers and post them back. Anything we don't get through, not to worry, we'll be able to take those away and answer them and get them published. So the focus on those of you, the focus is on those of you today who are either new to Azure or at the very beginning of your Azure journey. So we will be looking at why you might want to consider using the cloud in the first place, why we believe Microsoft Azure is the best choice for education, and specifically we'll be looking at backup and disaster recovery with Azure. This is the second webinar in our Azure123 series, so some of the beginning slides might be a repeat of the first webinar, but it's just to paint a picture for any new attendees. So the Q&A window is now open, so if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and post them as we go along, and we'll, like I say, towards the last 15 minutes, we'll answer as many of those as we can. So before I talk a bit more about why we at Sol-Tec believe that Azure is the best option for education, I just want to make sure you are all aware of the Azure for Students offer. This allows students to get started with some free Azure credits and access to some free services without requiring a credit card to sign up. So I've popped the URL on the screen. There's also a second URL, which is azure.microsoft.com/learn. This is Microsoft's new learning platform. It's sort of a modular based course. So you pick a module that you'd like to, in an area that you would like to learn about, e.g. say portal dashboards or portal management, and you can work through it in sort of a classroom sort of environment. Okay. So let's look at why we feel Microsoft Azure is the best cloud for education. Starting with flexibility. There is still this misconception that Azure doesn't support open source. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, 1 in 4 Azure virtual machines are running Linux. So if you're running open source, you can bring the tools that you use and skills you already have and run virtually any application using the open source operating system of your choice. We have customers running CentOS, Oracle, Ubuntu, and Red Hat, and many more. There's an extensive marketplace of images as well that can be consumed in Azure. These are published by many third parties and tested on Azure from the likes of Cisco, Dell, Barracuda, FortiGate, just to name a few. So you'll still be able to use the tools that you're familiar with in your on-premise data center. Azure lets your researchers run open source tools and kits too, like Python, Node.js, and many more. So with Azure, you won't be forced to choose between Azure-specific only tools. It's completely open and adding more and more to its capabilities every day. Their pricing and scalability. So Azure helps educators reduce overhead costs associated with data storage, server maintenance, and networking. Azure's pay-as-you-go pricing means you only pay for what you use. You can change your Azure solution in minutes to reflect seasonal usage instead of paying year-round. So if you typical education is you've got your student term times, so you could spin up more services during your term times, and on the holidays you can spin down your services to reduce your costs. You can also use existing Windows Server licenses with software assurance. With this, you can save up to 80% compared to the traditional pay-as-you-go pricing available in Azure. And that's when you combine it with Azure Hybrid Benefit and Azure Reserved VM instances. So Azure's compliance coverage is more comprehensive than any other cloud provider. They hold more certifications, making it the most trusted cloud platform. Azure meets a range of international and industry-specific standards like ISO 27001. Security and privacy are built into the Microsoft Azure platform. Azure offers many services and tools such as Azure Security Center, which gives you complete visibility and control over the security in your environment for free, with enhanced features at a small cost. So as you can just see there, populating onto the screen, Azure is now in 54 regions around the world, which is more than AWS and Google combined. It was the first cloud provider to put data centers in South Africa. And Azure also has many sovereign regions which cater to special requirements, such as the US Azure government and Azure Germany. And to even add to that, on top of the 54 regions, there is also Azure Stack, which offers majority of the same services as the public Azure cloud, but this is for use in your own data centers or in a disjointed scenario, such as an oil rig out at sea. There are many reasons we could talk about as to why Microsoft Azure. However, I did want to quickly cover Azure Security Center. As we adopt cloud and hybrid cloud environments, it's important for you to be able to understand the security state across both your data centers and cloud workloads. Azure Security Center gives you a unified view of security across all your workloads and locations. Using Azure Security Center, we can continuously monitor the security of your machines, networks, and Azure services using hundreds of built-in security assessments. Use actionable security recommendations to remediate issues before they can be exploited. I really urge you to take a look at Azure Security Center. There is a free tier to get you started, with some of the more advanced features coming at a small cost. So, protecting data and operations with Azure Backup and Site Recovery. Azure Site Recovery, it's aimed at helping reduce costs. Customers do not have to pay for the additional infrastructure, the power to run and cool machines, or to employ IT personnel to manage those machines. Very simply, with Azure Backup and Site Recovery, you're paying to maintain, just paying for what you use, rather than maintaining a complete secondary data center. Customers can leverage automation to enable the true power of the recovery plans. This means you can, at the click of a button, orchestrate your complete failover from an on-premise data center up into Azure, or from Azure region to Azure region. ASR provides rich capabilities as well to help quickly replicate the virtual and physical machines to a customer's own secondary data center. It could be that you're already using a highly available application in two regions, into existing data centers, but ASR can still help you protect those workloads. Moving on to the next topic of today's webinar, data protection. You may have already heard the term quite a bit, ASR or Azure Site Recovery, thrown about, but what does it stand for and what does it offer? So ASR can be broken down into two main services. You have Azure Backup and Azure Site Recovery, which is delivered through replication. Starting with Azure Backup, Educators collect data at staggering rates. You have student information, research data, a variety of data comes through our universities in the educational sector. Azure Backup offers unlimited scalability, protecting limitless data for up to 99 years with a 99.95% monthly availability. With Microsoft Azure, your data is covered and compliant no matter where you store it, your data center or in the cloud. You need continuous access to that data with incremental backups, shorter recovery times, and data encryption both in transit and at rest. You can rely on your data being up to date, accessible, and secure with Azure Backup. Currently, Azure Backup offers us a wide range of options. Just to name a few. You can back up Azure virtual machines. You can back up file share hosted in Azure. You can back up a SQL database on an Azure virtual machine. And with the use of an Azure backup server, you can back up your on-premise data center virtual machines, not just limited to Hyper-V, that can do VMware as well. You can also back up physical Windows servers as well with the use of the Microsoft Azure Site Recovery Services Agent, also known as MARS for short. And then with all these backup options, you've got the ability to restore a whole virtual machine, or you can go more granular and restore just a couple of files from inside the virtual machine or physical server itself. So moving on to the fun bit, the Azure Backup demo. So due to time, as we have a 1 hour webinar and we're constrained by the resources available, two things I'm going to cover is an Azure VM backup and restore, and a file level backup and recovery using MARS agent. So switch over to the Azure web portal. I'm actually going to run this in reverse in the conventional sense, just for timings. So in Azure, you land on the dashboard page, as you can see here, and we're going to go to the Recovery Services Vault. And in here we have Azure Site Recovery Vault. Both backup and recovery services are done under the same Azure service. I'll just quickly skim through what all these options are. You've got the overview pane, good place to get started. Also, you can quickly flick through and monitor your backup health and site recovery health. You can view the activity log. Anything occurring inside of the Azure portal will be logged inside this activity log. You can set who you want to have access to this vault. Put some custom tags on there if you want to do any extensive reporting. These tags are quite handy for doing it. Quick diagnose and solve area. So Microsoft will list any potential common issues in this area so that you can quickly take an action to resolve any problems you may be having. You can view the properties of your recovery services vault. Resource locks. This prevents locks down a resource so it can't be deleted, or you could set it so that no changes could be made to it. An automation script. This is for if I wanted to very quickly redeploy the whole scenario. I can use this automation script, which Azure builds for me. I can then download it and redeploy it. We'll move down to the manage section. In here is all the traditional bits that you may want to change about the recovery services vaults. So in here we have backup policies. As this is a brand new vault, it's just got the default policies in here for an Azure virtual machine and a SQL server in Azure. If we were backing up on-premise, we can look at our backup infrastructure. So in here, there's nothing here to currently view because I'm not backing up anything on-premise, but we could see any management servers and protected servers are in our on-premise data center. And the same for our site recovery infrastructure. If we wanted to do any site recovery from an on-premise data up into Azure, this is where we could view all of the components that we've pushed down to our on-premise data center. We have recovery plans. This is a nice section. I mentioned earlier in the slide deck that we could orchestrate a whole data center failover at the click of a button. And this is where you plan that orchestrated failover. You create a recovery plan to say, I want to recover my domain controllers first, followed by my database servers, followed by my application servers. Some backup reporting and some other conventional areas of the Azure service as well that you may be familiar with from using other resources. So you have alerting, you're setting your diagnostic options, reviewing a job history, backups and site recovery, and setting up some alerting, etc. So onto the demonstration. So I've already backed up some virtual machines ahead of today, to hopefully speed up the demo. So in here, I can come to protected items. I can look at my backup items, and I already have a virtual machine that's already backed up. What I'm going to do in this instance, so I'm going to do this the opposite way around. I'm going to restore it first, just because it's the longer process, and hopefully once it's restored, we can look at that. So we come into here, I've selected my virtual machine. You can see I've got some basic information about it. You know, when its last backup was, I could view all the jobs for the last 24 hours, etc. At the top, I've got my options, so restore virtual machine, file recovery, and things like that. So I'm just going to go through and hit restore virtual machine. Select the latest restore point. I've got a couple of options here. I can select to replace the virtual machine entirely, or I can create a new virtual machine. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new virtual machine. I'm going to call it test VM. This is test VM2 restore. Give it a resource group. So everything in Azure is containerized in a resource group. Select the virtual network that I want it to go to, and a default subnet, and a staging location. So this is what Azure is going to use to stage the data before finally restoring the virtual machine. Okay on that. And click restore. So you can see under here, that's triggering the restore for the virtual machine. Now, like I said, it could take 10, 15 or 20 minutes or so. So that's why I've done the restore process first. And so how to protect an existing virtual machine is Azure's is one of the simplistic tools to use. It tries to streamline the process and make it as easy as possible. So you come to the Getting Started section and select Backup. Where is your workload running? So on this instance, it's running in Azure. I could select on-premise otherwise. And what do I want to back up? I want to back up a virtual machine. Select Backup. I'm going to select the default policy. I have the option here, if I had any custom policies, I could select those or take the opportunity to create a new one. I'm going to select default policy. And this is another VM that's not being backed up yet. Okay on that. Enable backup. You'll see it submits the job, and it will go ahead and enable that for backup. I can check the progress on my restores. So that restore I've just initiated under here, under monitoring backup jobs. You can see it's in progress, and you can see that it's also configuring the other virtual machine for backup. So while those two are running, the other section is to show you a file level backup recovery using the Mars agent. So again, we go to our Getting Started section. Where is my workload running? Well, it's on-premise, if this is in my data center. What do I want to back up? I want to back up files and folders. And then I'm going to click Pair Infrastructure. And this is a very simple, it gives you some simple steps on to do. So download agent from Windows Server. Go ahead and download, and then run this. Very simple next installation. For it to pop up. And that's just in the background. I'm going to hit download on this vault credentials. Save this on my C drive. New folder. Yes. Azure 123 ASR demo. And save. It's registration. This is going to connect my device to the Recovery Services Vault using the credentials that I've just downloaded. Click next. Generate a passphrase. This passphrase is very important. It's used to encrypt the backup. You never want to lose this passphrase. If you do, and you ever need to restore the data and you've lost it, you're going to not be able to unencrypt the data. So it's very important that it's never lost. I'm just going to select to save that into the same folder. And this is going to go ahead and register my device with the Recovery Services Vault. While that's running away, I'm just going to check the progress of the other jobs we started. You can see here that the new VM has been configured for a backup, and the other VM is still restoring. And I can see how far through its process it is as well. At the moment, it's at 1%. I suspect that will jump along quite massively once it's further through. If it comes to protected items, Azure Virtual Machines, you can now see my test VM4, so it's completed its backup check. And it's warning me that it hasn't done a backup yet. I can then select to do a manual backup, or the backup policy, the default policy would take effect tonight, and do a backup at 11:30 this evening. And there we go. So we can also see that my device is now also registered to the backup vault. Tick the box, launch. So straight away, go ahead, launch the agent, and I can select what I would like to configure the backup. So on the top right, select schedule backup. What would I like to protect? I think we'll protect that folder with the very important passphrase. Next. Schedule a backup. You can do multiple windows every day or every week. I'm just going to leave this as default for now. Select a retention policy. Again, just going to leave this as default for now. You could, if you wanted to, seed the backup, but because this is literally just one file, I'm going to say automatically over the network and finish. And that's now created the backup schedule for my device. Now that's done, I'm just going to hit backup now. Up, and off that goes. And it's going to back up that folder. The backup jobs. You can see that new backup what I've just created for test VM4 is in progress, and test VM2 is restoring. I may have to come back to this at the end of the webinar. And it's completed and backed up on files. There we go, job completed. Find out and locate that folder. Delete some data in there. Going to delete the credentials. There we go, so we can see that's completely gone. Using the Mars agent, again on my device, on the top right, select recover data. I could select to send this to another server or another device, but I'm just going to use the same device for now. I want to restore individual files and folders. I select the volume. That's my C drive, which is the recovery points. Just now 11:30. Excellent, mount. Now I'm going to mount that another drive letter. And once it's mounted, we'll be able to copy and paste the files back onto our device. There we go, it's just mounted. I click Browse. You can now see I have a new G drive. There's my folder. There's my Vault credentials, so I can copy that back onto my C drive. Paste. There we go, there's my file level recovery completed. Once I've finished, I can select Unmount, and then what that'll do is it will unmount the backup data, clear it from my device. That is the file level backup recovery agent. Let's see how the VM is getting on restoring and the other one backing up. So VM still restoring. This VM is in progress for its first backup. Okay, so what we'll do, just because we're halfway through the webinar, is we'll see if we can come back to those at the end of the webinar. Returning to the slide deck. So just to recap what we did there is we backed up a virtual machine hosted in Azure, and we also began the recovery process of another virtual machine hosted in Azure. And we also added a server to be protected using the Microsoft Azure Recovery Services agent, in which we protected one folder, and then we also deleted a file from that folder and restored it using Mars agent. So moving on with the slideshow. So the final topic and the alternative and the other service in Azure Site Recovery, the disaster recovery component of it. So you've got the backup component, and the other component is Azure Site Recovery. Backup, as you know, is a conventional backup product, just backs up a point in time of your virtual machine, whereas Azure Site Recovery replicates your virtual machine or physical server from on-premise over to another on-premise data center that you currently have, or into an Azure region. As you know, when systems go offline, students can't swipe for their cards for meals, staff members can't find files, both students and staff can't access the online portals. When this downtime occurs, you need a plan to get your systems running again. So Azure Site Recovery allows you to automate your protection and recovery process to quickly orchestrate recovery. You can protect all your major workloads, not just your critical ones, while eliminating the added costs associated with managing multiple data centers. Azure also offers continuous health monitoring of your estate with recovery services. The scenarios you've got is you can protect an on-premise data center to Azure. You can do Azure region to Azure region, so UK South to UK West. And if you also already have a secondary data center, you can protect a data center that is managed and orchestrated by ASR. ASR can also protect physical servers and replicate them to a virtual machine. Once the failover is committed, like permanently, you had a true DR. However, you won't be able to replicate that back to the physical server. ASR can also be used as a migration tool, and because of that, if you're coming from on-premise to Azure, doing a complete migration, ASR is also free to use for the first 31 days. So disaster recovery and business continuity is possibly one of the most important but overlooked operations in IT. Even in Azure, having a DR plan to assist a region of your Azure deployment is important. Azure actually had several months ago a fairly large outage in their South Central US region where storage was offline for roughly 24 hours. This meant every dependent service on storage, virtual machines, or SQL database services in Azure, they're all unavailable. What it highlighted is that even when you're in a public cloud like Azure or AWS or Google, where they have these fantastic SLAs of 99.9%, it's still very important to have a DR business continuity plan, even Azure to Azure. So with Azure Site Recovery, the aim is to make this as easy as possible with the ability to fully orchestrate failover with the use of a click of a button, or it could be orchestrated from an alert. So short little discussion there on Azure Site Recovery. We'll get back to the fun stuff, which is actually doing the demo of Azure Site Recovery. So we have about 8 minutes left before Q&A. So we'll see how far we can get through on this demo. Right. Can you bring this back up? So I'll just refresh this as well, see how our backup jobs are doing. So our restore is in progress, and the backup of the other virtual machine is still in progress as well. So again, going to run this in reverse. Restores take longer, so I've got a pre-replicated virtual machine. So I'm going to show doing a replication first, and then I've got another virtual machine which I can start protecting as new. So it's just giving me a replication health warning that the virtual machine is turned off. This is from a test scenario, just making sure everything was working for this webinar. But you can see down here, it's showing me a nice graphic of where my virtual machine is, how it's replicating it. Again, this is where Azure Site Recovery constantly does health monitoring of the environment. Virtual machine being powered off is nothing too big to worry about. So at the top, I've got a couple of options. I could reprotect, resynchronize my virtual machine if the source went offline for like 48 hours or something like that. I could bring it back into synchronization. The most two important options is you've got a failover option and a test failover. For this scenario, we're just going to run through the test failover. What this gives you as well is if you had a state of 100 virtual machines that you are protecting with ASR, but you wanted to make sure your DR and business continuity process is running, you could use the test failover and run through this process every month just to make sure if the worst case was to ever happen and you had to do this for real, you could choose the failover option. So selecting test failover. Failover direction is all pre-configured for me. West Europe to North Europe always goes to its sister region. I want to select, I've got a couple of options here. I can select my latest available point, or if I wanted to make sure I had an application consistent point, e.g. if my database was running on this server, I could choose the app consistent option of a up-to-date SQL Server 2016 or 2017. It's pretty crash consistent anyway. So set the latest processed, select the destination virtual network that I want it to go to, and I'd hit OK. And that is going to start the test failover for my virtual machine. Come back to the main pane. I can go to site recovery jobs, and when it catches up, there we go, test failover in progress. So that is my virtual machine being failed over for test. So protecting a brand new virtual machine, again, go to the getting started section, site recovery. You have some choices here. Is it on-premise? Make sure I've got my infrastructure compared. So there's a configuration server which is involved in a VMware deployment, which basically sits in the middle between your VMware hosts and your Azure infrastructure. In this case, This is going to be for an Azure virtual machine. The replicate application, source region is Azure. My source location is West Europe. That's Azure Resource Manager. That's my description. Virtual machine is in Resource Group VM3. Okay. And there you go. It's found my virtual machine ready for replication. Select it. Click OK. And at this opportunity, I've got an opportunity here just to edit some details. It's pre-populated these all for me. ASR is trying to make this as quick and as easy as possible. So anything I've got missing, it will go ahead and create for me. And then I just click Create Target Resources, which is setting up that infrastructure to the other side and enable the replication. Now I'll go ahead and now add this virtual machine to my protected items. So come down to replicated items, do a little refresh. There it is. That's VM3. It's healthy. Status is enabling protection, so it's just started its initial sync. So while that one's just starting its initial sync, come back to my site recovery jobs and check the progress of my test failover. Still in progress. Let's check the backup jobs, see if any of those are finished. Yeah, they're still both in progress. This is why I started the restores first, just because of the nature of them taking a bit longer. What we'll do is we'll swap back to the slide deck, close out the slides, and if there's time towards the end of the session, we'll come back to check on the status of the failover and the backup. So just to recap of what I did there in that demo is protected virtual machine in my Azure West Europe region, and I said I wanted to replicate it over to my Azure North Europe region. If that way, God forbid, if the data center in Ireland, Dublin, burnt to the ground, I can restore my services over in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. We also then begun the test failover process for a pre-existing virtual machine I had as well, which, like I say, if we get some time towards the end, checking the status of that. This brings us to the Q&A discussion. So let's check if anyone has posted. No. Good questions. Okay. Barry, anything that you potentially want to add that you think I've missed or want to highlight on?
No, thank you, Ryan. That was an excellent demonstration. I think sort of for me, one of the benefits of this solution is how quickly you can get this solution up and running. With any Azure solution, you can, as Ryan mentioned, it's pay as you go, so you can get this up and running very quickly with no infrastructure on premise at all. The second benefit for me with this is how you can test a failover. Previously, if you had two data centers, actually testing a failover would be very difficult. But as Ryan just demonstrated, it's very easy to test this in a safe environment without infecting production, and that's a massive benefit for if you're talking to auditors, if you're for your checks. It's a really good solution to double check that everything is operating as you want it to be, because your data is obviously crucial to running your organization.
Yep, I totally agree with that. It's one of the most overlooked things in IT is what people think they have a DR process, but they don't test it. And in worst case scenarios, when it comes time to invoke that DR, it's a bit of a scramble, whereas ASR makes it easier than ever before. Thank you, Barry. Just a couple of more slides. So if there are any questions that anyone still wants to ask by the end of the webinar, just post them. If me or Barry don't respond to them now, we will still have them captured and can answer them after the webinar. Final slides. So a lot of some useful resources. So some things we went over today is, mentioned Azure hybrid benefit. So saving yourself money in Azure. So if you have an existing software assurance with Microsoft, you can save 70% versus pay-as-you-go. This is a big win for Microsoft compared to the other public clouds like AWS and Google. The Microsoft Learning link, so anyone beginning their Azure journey, I highly recommend go to this. You can pre-select, what your job role is. So, are you working with Azure Big Data like log analytics or Data Factory, Power BI, or are you an Azure administrator? Working with virtual machines and networks. If you go to the docs.microsoft.com/learn, you can select those job roles and it will pre-build a learning path for you. There's to demonstrate that Azure is the most trusted cloud platform out there today. You've got servicetrust.microsoft.com, ViewPage UK blueprints. Again, it's go onto their website. It will show you all their current certifications and their compliance with the various countries and governments and industry standard certifications that they've got and work towards. Docs.microsoft.com. Microsoft's documentation is fantastic. It's also open source. There's a lot of contributors that aren't always necessarily Microsoft employees. They could be MVPs as well, just valued professionals, and are constantly adding content to docs.microsoft.com. The link for Azure for students, so students can go sign up completely free. Again, no credit card. You can get, I think it's $100, possibly more, of credit. You also get access to 12 months worth of free services, and plus 25 services which are always free. And just to cover Azure, the two services that we've covered today, Azure Backup and Azure Site Recovery, are available at azure.microsoft.com. So this is pretty much bringing this webinar to a close. Again, we've got 10 minutes left on the time, so after the end of the slide deck, I will just flick back to the Azure portal to see how our replication and restore is going. So the next webinar is currently planned for the 6th of December, and that is host your internet and intranet in Azure. And what this is going to cover is this is going to look at the Azure platform as a service. This will be Azure Web Apps and how you can host a web application and a WordPress site using Azure Web Apps. And we'll provide a technical demo of how easy it is to get up running, as well as some guidance on how to migrate your existing data and applications as well. We'll also cover features for that, such as auto scaling and automatically patching. And then our final slide on the slide deck, just a bit about us. Sol-Tec has been around for 26 years. It's got some excellent skills in helping empower companies with their digital transformation and migrate into Azure. And our contact details there on the left. So what I'm going to do with the last few minutes left of the webinar is just switch back to see how our recovery jobs are running. Ooh, excellent. So It's another refresh. Backup jobs. So that initial restart I kicked off is in progress, restoring. You can see it's about 65% completed with 14 minutes remaining. And you can see that the new virtual machine that I added to backup as well, working through it. So it's actually snapshotted the virtual machine, and now it's just copying the data into the recovery services vault. Site recovery jobs. So the test failover has successfully completed for test VM1. Excellent. So if I come to our virtual machines pane, there it is. I can see test VM1 stopped and deallocated over in West Europe. And I can see test VM1 test. Test is always added to the end of the virtual machine name to signify that it was a test run. And I can see that that is running in North Europe. Again, we've got a couple of spare minutes left, so what I'll take the opportunity to do, if I can, is I'm just going to edit this virtual machine. I'm going to attach a public IP resource to this. IP address, test VM1, test IP, save. So this is just allowing me to get to my virtual machine. You can do this publicly, but the best practice way of doing this would obviously be over a private connection. Just for the sake of a demo, we're doing this over the internet. Just wait for it to update the network interface. Once that's updated, I should be able to connect to the virtual machine and show you it running in Europe. We're at time, couple of minutes left. While that's still running, I went in. Oh, there you go. Just finished. So we'll test VM1. Just connect to that. Check its security. I know what it needs. Because it's a restored virtual machine, it's got no security group attached to it. I'll just associate one. So allow me to come in over the internet to connect to the server. There we go. Okay, it's still not letting me connect. It could be that some of the services are not. Let's just check the public IP. Okay, if I try it, the others. So I've connected to a different virtual machine instead. This is test VM4. So this is running in North Europe alongside the restored virtual machine. It could be that, could very simply be that the remote desktop services is not up yet on restored virtual machine. Let's see if we can at least ping its interface. Double check what that was. Test VM1. working. Its private interface is 10.0.1.6. See if we can ping that. Yes. Responding to ping, so it could do with a reboot, but let's just check the ARP cache. This is not there on the ARP cache either. Yes, it's up, but there is some problems with it, and this is exactly why it's very important to do test failover. Give that a restart. While that's restarting, see if there's any other questions that come through. Nope, no other questions. Okay. Opportunity. It's definitely been running. We can tell it's been running from the metrics. It's restarted. Oh, wrong there. Showing up in the ARP cache. So it's there in the ARP cache, so Windows Firewall could just be blocking the ping. Can we connect to it? We can establish a connection to its private IP, just not its public IP. VM1. And there we go. Before the end of the webinar, there we are. We are connected to our stored virtual machine, which was replicated from the West Europe region of Azure to the North Europe region of Azure. And we can confirm that just by looking at its private IP address and hostname. Yeah. So yeah, it did have a bit of a tidy startup, unknown. IP config 10.0.1.6, and if we look at the Azure portal, this is our best replicated virtual machine, private IP address 10.0.1.6, and host name is testvm1, which is what the name of the original source virtual machine was called. Okay, and that pretty much brings this webinar to an end. So thank you everyone for joining. And there's only been one question asked. But any other questions, please feel free to email myself or Barry. I'll just get back to the first slideshow. So our contact details are there. So you've got R.Williams at sol-tech.com and b-sharpen at sol-tech.com. Okay, so thank you very much from me. Anything else from you, Barry, before we close off?
No, it's just thank you everyone for attending, and if you're watching this recorded, hope you all enjoy the webinar. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and goodbye.